Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Overwatch League Fan Thoughts and Analysis. Today we're going to be going over the Chengdu Hunters Season 2 roster. We've already gone over, of course, all 12 of the normal teams, or the Season 1 teams, not normal teams, Season 1 teams, plus the Atlanta Reigns. We're on to the second expansion team today, the Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu Hunters are a very interesting team, a very interesting roster. Of course, there was originally Silk Thread on this team. He originally had joined the team before retiring based on a fear of his health and the way the practice was looking, which is a very interesting point to bring up. Is the practice a problem? If a player has retired instead of actually just playing, then maybe it was more about the well-being of the player, in this case Silk Thread, but maybe he just was worried about the practice regimen and it wasn't mental health. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to talk about this team, and we're going to start with this team's DPS roster. Now this team is very interesting. It is an entirely Chinese-speaking team. All of the players are from China. Bacon Jack, who we're going to talk about first here, is from Taiwan, so obviously take that as you will. If you are a pro-Taiwan person or a pro-China, that's whatever, but Bacon Jack here comes from a very interesting past. He has not actually played anything in Overwatch for a little while. For most of 2018, he was actually playing PUBG for the team Flash Wolves, which is who he played Overwatch for. So his last Overwatch Premier tournament was APAC Premier 2017. This was back in October 2017, so over a year ago was the last time we played in a big tournament. And he lost with Flash Wolves to GC Busan. Yeah, so we're talking about someone who has switched over to PUBG and is now switching back to Overwatch. That's a very, very, very interesting thing, and I don't really think that's a great thing, and that's bad in a lot of ways, because if you are on this team for the money rather than for the game, that's a little problematic. And this is not the only player on this roster that this is the case. We'll talk about some others later on, but this Chengdu Hunters roster, to me, is somewhat problematic for some of these reasons, and this is the first example here of a player who hasn't played Overwatch competitively or professionally in over a year. The meta has changed a lot since then. Hanzo has gotten his rework since then. Symmetra got a rework. Torbjorn got a rework. Since that time, Moira has been released. Brigitte has been released. Wrecking Ball has been released. Ashe has been released. Tons of hero nerfs and buffs and new maps and all this other stuff. So it's very interesting to see how a player who hasn't played professionally in a long time, now maybe he's been playing still, in his free time. Maybe I don't know if he streams or anything like that, whatever, but it appears that he does stream. So maybe he has been playing and keeping up with the game and keeping up with the meta and been playing with a lot of people, but it's troublesome when you see a player who left the game coming back to the game, and I wonder if it's for the wrong reason. But he is a DPS player, as I mentioned. Big Reaper player, big Tracer player, big Hanzo player, but I think Reaper is his really big hero, which is interesting because Reaper's not a fantastic hero in the meta right now, but we'll see how he does. Next we have Jin Mu, who comes from a couple different places. He comes from Big Time Regal Gaming, very recently, but before that he played for Moss 7 Club for a little bit more time than he played for Big Time Regal Gaming. He's not the only player from that those two teams, so that means there is some existing chemistry here already. He did play with Moss 7 Club in Contenders 2018 Season 2 China and Season 1, finishing in pretty close to the bottom, and that 11-12 range in Contender Season 1, and then a little bit better in that 5-8 range for Season 2. They got second in the Contenders 2018 Season 2 Trials for China, so They had some pretty good finishes. I wouldn't say pretty good finishes. He comes from a team that has had some success, not a ton. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But he might be this team's Genji and Brigitte and Junkrat for the most part. So he'll be interesting to watch. I haven't seen any of these teams. A lot of these players are not ones that scream to me, that cry out to me as really big name players that you would recognize. Next, we have Yang Xiaolong. He comes from Miraculous Youngster back in 2017. He did try to make it into the Overwatch League, but he didn't, and then he retired and switched, or didn't retire, he left for Overwatch for PUBG, much like our good old friend Bacon Jack did, and then came back to Overwatch. So once again, different meta, doesn't have a lot of experience playing with any other people because, Miraculous Youngster, not a lot of people from that team, and those that are, we're talking about a guy who hasn't played since 2017. No, he hasn't played since December of 2017 professionally. Played in the Nexus Cup annual finals, where they did not finish very well, losing to Lucky Future. So I'm a little concerned about some of these players on this roster that are PUBG players, right, who left Overwatch to go to a different game and then came back to now play Overwatch again. I'm curious. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, PUBG was banned in China, but I don't actually know if that's true. But it's very just weird. Obviously, that has nothing to do with him coming back to Overwatch, because that was a more recent story. But he's going to be your Soldier 76, your Tracer, your Reaper. I don't know if any of these players are Widowmaker players. I don't know if this team just doesn't think DPS play will be very important to the meta, because this is just a very weird batch of DPS players that just don't seem to me to be these really big, good signings, and I'm really curious to see where this team is going with this, because I have no idea, to be completely honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of this team's DPS core, but maybe, some of the other spots they have a little bit better talent. So let's take a look at some of those other spots. We're going to start with the tank play, and that is Ameng. Ameng comes from LGD Gaming, played in Contender Season 2 for China with Moss 7 Club, and then went to Big Time Regal, and then went to LGD Gaming for the NetEase Esports X Tournament Summer, which was held in late August. So, another player from that same group, similar to Jinmu. So we have two players from that same group that are now on the same team, so there is some chemistry there, which is very nice. He is going to be your main tank player, which is funny because I think one of his best heroes is D.Va. He's also good at Wrecking Ball, but he's going to be your main tank. He's got that Reinhardt, who he's pretty good at as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this guy does as their main tank, because he's not super well known as a main tank player. So I'm curious. But next we have their flex tanks, who will be complementing Ameng here. We have Late Young, who I think will be this team's starter. He played for the Chinese World Cup team, which got second place overall. Also played for Team CC in Contenders 2018 Season 2 for China. Also spent some time in Miraculous Youngster back in 2017. There's a little bit of chemistry there with, who was it, Yang Xiaolong, who also played for that team. So there's a little bit of chemistry here, but it's been a little while, and that's one of the problems. There's just kind of a weird group here. But Late Young was pretty good during the World Cup. I thought he was better than a lot of other players. I thought he played pretty well, so he is here on the Chengdu Hunters, and he is one of the players that I expect to shine for this team. He will be playing alongside Elsa, who is the other flex tank. He's a little bit more known for his Zarya play, whereas Late Young is more known for being able to play more than one. He can play Zarya and Diva, but I'm sure he will play more Diva. Elsa will play more Zarya. But he comes, Elsa that is, comes from Lingan Esports, who finished in the top 8 in Contenders 2018 Season 2 for China. So he's got some experience, but I 100% expect Late Young to be the starter. He was on the Chinese World Cup team. Clearly, he has shown that he is a good and strong player. So I would be surprised if he isn't the starter for this team in that role. So that's what I expect. We will see. So yeah, this tank line is interesting. I'm very curious to see how Ameng plays mostly, because I don't think he's a fantastic main tank player in terms of like what he's known for. I think he's more known for playing kind of that both kind of main tank flex tank role. So I'm curious to see what happens and if maybe there's some weird roster moves that they make with this team. I don't know. I'm very interested in this tank core though. But let's get to the supports, the final group here. First one we have is Kaio. He is known for his off support play, so he's more that Ana, that Zenyatta, that Moira kind of thing. If you're not running Moira as your main healer, obviously. He also comes from Team CC, so some more chemistry here. There is some chemistry here between some of these players, so it's not completely out of the blue like signing players that have no chemistry with each other. There's at least some chemistry. So play for Team CC, that off support player. Don't know much about him. I also don't know if he will play a ton because I don't know anything about him. There's two other supports on this team. Next we have Gary, who is also an off support. He comes from Lucky Future, which is a team that has a little bit more recognition, and I think it was a better team. They won Contenders 2018 Season 1 in China, and then came top 10 in Season 2, so kind of a drop-off, whereas Kaio comes from Team CC, who finished top 4 in Season 1, and then top 8 for Season 2. So there's some kind of, there's a little more consistency with Team CC in a way, but also I think Gary had more success because obviously they won, so it's not. It'll be interesting to see which of these two starts, but then you have the main support player who will almost guaranteed be Yveltal, because he is the only one here who plays that Mercy, that Lucio, at a high level. Yveltal was on the World Cup 2018 China team. He, while not on World Cup played for Lingan Esports, who got top 8 in both Season 1 and Season 2 of Contenders 2018 for China. He is a player that I expect to be the main support player, obviously coming from Lingan Esports. He has some chemistry, once again, with some other players on this team. But it's weird, because it's not the same case of, like, this guy has a bunch of time played with some other players that are of similar skill, right? Being on the World Cup team, he has played with Late Young, and being on Lingan, he's played with Elsa. So either one of those flex tank players he should be fine with. Maybe a little bit more so with Elsa, because they probably played a lot more often, but at least he's played with Late Young in the past, so he has some time. But the thing that worries me the most is two of their DPS players did not play this game competitive or professionally for a year. I'm really concerned about that. This team, to me, has a lot of problems, and I think some of that may just come down to the fact that they went for the all-Chinese roster. We saw Shanghai attempt to do it, and it failed. Now we see Chengdu doing it. While I think it's slightly better because you have players like Yveltal and Late Young who have been good and made it to the World Cup and made it to the World Cup finals. They have experience on the big stage. I question some of these signings, specifically Bacon Jack and Yang Xiaolong. If obviously you have to keep in mind that they originally had Silk Thread, right? Someone who does have Overwatch League experience. Someone who, when you look at his hero pool, is a little bit more, well, a little bit less Reaper focused, but still not a Widowmaker player. He was kind of that Tracer, a little bit of Genji, Soldier, Pharah. No one really on this team has that Widowmaker play. And if Widowmaker is as big as she was throughout Season 1, which she might not be anymore just because of the way the meta has changed, and go to the dominant meta, if Goat's still a dominant meta, then it doesn't matter. You don't have any DPS players. And that's what's hard to kind of figure out. Because there are members on this team. Some of this DPS play, Brigitte is a big part of it, right? Jin Mu is pretty well known for his Brigitte play, from what I've seen. So if that's what you have to run, if triple tank, triple support, Goat's comp is big and is still the main composition of this league going forward, well then there's nothing to worry about. My worry is, what if that's not the main thing? What if the meta changes by the time the season starts? What if the meta changes for Stage 2 or Stage 3? What if the new hero that gets released in the middle of Stage 1 changes the meta again and Goat becomes not a big thing and now DPS play is important again? This team to me has some problems on it. Now maybe I'll be proved wrong. Maybe Bacon Jack and Yang Xiaolong's year out of Overwatch and playing PUBG has improved their play, or maybe they have been playing enough and they've been keeping up with the game enough that they're going to be fine. I don't know. Obviously, things are going to have to play out when we get into the season. But I think it's very interesting that this team has become what it has after what Shanghai did last season. I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised that a team this soon after the Shanghai Dragons 0-40 season would once again say we're going to go with a completely Chinese team. I don't think China is necessarily a bad scene for Overwatch. I think there are plenty of really good players in China. My problem is this team might not be that team. I think it has some improvements to what the Shanghai Dragons were going into the season. Obviously, the Shanghai Dragons had Sky, who was probably the best Chinese player on the team, and then eventually Dia proved that he was a pretty good player, but I don't believe Sky was on that roster from the beginning, or if he was, he, for whatever reason didn't play as much as some others did. But I'm very interested in this team. I don't really think Chengdu is going to be a top-level team. I think they're probably the weakest team in the Pacific, and the weakest team in China by far, obviously, by extension. But I think they're in an interesting division, because I think the Pacific is the most competitive, and I think it's one of the highest. I think the highest ceiling, like the best team in the Pacific, isn't as good as the best team in the Atlantic, but the middle ground teams are a lot closer together than the middle ground teams in the Atlantic. But Chengdu, to me, looks like a team that is not very great. And I'm interested to see how it goes, because this team might collapse. This team might not play well at all, or they'll surprise us, right? We don't really know at this point in time, but I don't expect them to be a great team. I think overall they will probably be bottom 2 in the league. Obviously, usually I don't really give my thoughts in that regard, in that depth, but I just have a lot of issues with this team, and it's very clear. So I'm not going to just hide it and be like, in reality, though, I think no. I have a lot of problems with this team. I have a lot of problems with the fact that 2 of their DPS players didn't play Overwatch for a year professionally, and there's a lot that goes into, of course, making a good team, and that's not the only thing, right? Obviously, they held open trials, I'm sure, and they were probably the ones that impressed them the most. But I wonder if, players that stopped playing Overwatch, maybe they stopped playing because they didn't enjoy the game, and now they're back, not because they enjoy the game, but because they looked and they saw the success of Overwatch League Season 1 and said, man, we could probably make a lot of money doing that. And I wonder if that's their reason for coming back. Because if it is, that's the wrong reason to come back. And if that's the reason they came back, it's not going to go well. So I'm curious. I'm a bit worried about this Chengdu Hunters roster. And that's really what I got for you. So the Chengdu Hunters, very interesting roster. One I'm interested in seeing how it all plays out. But that's where my thoughts on this team end, at least for now. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this roster. If you think I'm very wrong, if you agree with me, whatever. I'd love to hear that down below. But that's everything I got for you. So thank you for watching. I think I already said that, but it's whatever. Hope you have a very, very, very nice holiday season. I should probably say, I didn't say this in this past Overwatch Weekly, but there won't be an Overwatch Weekly Wednesday. It will likely come out Thursday, since I will be gone, but you will still get one of these on Monday. I will just record it early. So that's all I got for you. See you all in another video. Bye bye.